Ethan Carter had always believed that the most dangerous thing inside an imperial palace would be the paperwork. He would soon discover he had been spectacularly wrong. The shuttle carrying him descended through layers of shimmering atmosphere toward the capital world of the Asterian Empire. Beneath the clouds stretched a city that looked less constructed than carefully persuaded into existence. Towers of translucent crystal curved upward like frozen waves, suspended bridges floated without visible support, and streams of blue-white light carried silent transports between buildings. Above everything hovered the Imperial Palace, a mountain-sized structure resting on enormous anti-gravitic rings that glowed softly beneath its foundations. From a distance, it resembled a constellation that had decided to become architecture. Ethan adjusted the collar of his plain engineering uniform and glanced once more at the assignment displayed on his wrist console. Routine maintenance. Quantum energy lattice. Estimated duration, 3 days. Estimated political involvement, none. He smiled. Perfect. Whenever governments described a mission as routine, it usually meant someone else had already spent months making sure nothing interesting would happen. That suited him just fine. The palace welcomed visitors through an enormous gateway where invisible scanners swept across every molecule entering the complex. Ethan stood still while pale emerald beams passed over him from head to toe. "Human detected," announced a calm synthetic voice. "I certainly hope so. Species confirmation complete. So far, we're both doing well. No prohibited biological weapons. I left those at home." The scanner paused for almost 2 full seconds. "Humor detected. I apologize." "Apology accepted." Ethan blinked. "You can accept apologies?" "I was updated yesterday." "I regret asking." The gate quietly opened. 2 Imperial guards waited beyond it. They stood nearly 2.5 meters tall beneath polished silver armor covered with flowing patterns that seemed to move across the metal like living starlight. Their helmets concealed their expressions, but their posture radiated disciplined precision. One gestured politely. "Engineer Carter, that's me. Please follow us." The palace interior exceeded every expectation. The floors were transparent, revealing rivers of glowing energy flowing dozens of meters beneath his feet. Gardens floated in midair, anchored by localized gravity fields. Trees with glass-like leaves shimmered whenever people walked nearby, producing soft musical notes instead of rustling sounds. Tiny maintenance drones buzzed overhead like curious metallic insects. One suddenly stopped directly in front of Ethan. It projected a tiny holographic face. "You appear slightly tired." "I've been traveling for 16 hours. Recommendation: sleep. I'll put that on my schedule." "You have no scheduled sleep." "I knew I forgot something." The drone emitted what sounded suspiciously like a disappointed sigh before flying away. Even the guards seemed embarrassed. As they continued walking, Ethan noticed the palace inhabitants. Most resembled humans at first glance. Then the differences became apparent. Their ears were long and elegantly pointed, extending gracefully through silver, black, crimson, or golden hair. Some possessed luminous markings beneath their skin that glowed faintly whenever they spoke. Others had eyes displaying shifting galaxies instead of ordinary irises. Despite their extraordinary appearance, everyone seemed completely absorbed in their own responsibilities, exactly how Ethan preferred it. Engineers accomplished more when nobody noticed they existed. Eventually, they entered the grand processional hall. The chamber stretched so far that its opposite wall disappeared behind shimmering atmospheric haze. Hundreds of floating crystal spheres illuminated intricate murals depicting stars, ancient wars, and civilizations scattered across countless galaxies. Dozens of Imperial guards lined both sides with absolute stillness. High-ranking officials crossed the hall in orderly silence. Diplomats whispered. Scientists argued over holographic equations. Everything moved with elegant precision. Ethan admired the engineering more than the politics. He tilted his head upward. "How are they supporting that ceiling?" One guard answered, without moving. Artificial singularity anchors. Huh. You sound disappointed. I was hoping for giant invisible bolts. The guard remained silent. After several seconds, he quietly replied, That was unexpectedly amusing. I'll treasure this moment forever. They approached an enormous circular door formed from living crystal. Beyond it waited the palace's ancient quantum energy lattice, the reason Ethan had traveled halfway across the galaxy. He reached into his tool case. Finally, he murmured, something that actually makes sense. Before anyone could answer, laughter echoed somewhere deep within the palace. Not polite laughter, not ceremonial laughter. The delighted, unstoppable laughter of a child who had absolutely no intention of following palace rules. Several guards subtly straightened. One officer touched the communicator beside his helmet. Another sighed as though this had happened far too many times. Then came hurried footsteps, small, fast, getting closer. One captain frowned. Not again. Before Ethan had time to ask what that meant, a tiny silver-haired figure burst into the hall at impossible speed, weaving effortlessly between startled guards, as if every security formation were merely part of an elaborate game. Behind her came panicked voices. Your Highness! Please slow down! Block the eastern corridor! No, not that way! Every guard in the hall moved at once. None of them moved fast enough. The little girl never hesitated. She darted between two towering guards just as one of them reached for her, ducked beneath an outstretched arm, with the effortless confidence of someone who had escaped this exact formation dozens of times before, and sprinted directly toward Ethan. He barely had time to blink. A small body collided with him. His toolbox nearly slipped from his hand. Tiny arms wrapped tightly around his waist. I found you. The words rang through the enormous hall with astonishing clarity. Hundreds of conversations stopped at once. Officials froze. Scientists lowered their holographic displays. Maintenance drones suspended themselves in midair. Even the glowing trees seemed to stop singing. Ethan stared downward. The child looked no older than 7 by human standards. Her silver skin shimmered faintly beneath the palace lights. Her sapphire eyes sparkled with unmistakable joy, and her long, pointed ears peeked through soft white hair braided with tiny crystalline flowers. She looked up at him as though she had been searching for years. You came back. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I did. You promised. I have an unfortunate habit of making promises I don't remember. The girl laughed. It took you a long time. I got lost. You crossed half the galaxy. I get very lost. Several guards exchanged bewildered glances. One quietly whispered into his helmet. Protocol. Another whispered back. There isn't one. What if the princess refuses to release him? I'm checking. A pause. Still isn't one. The captain pinched the bridge of his nose beneath his helmet. Wonderful. The little princess squeezed Ethan even tighter. I missed you. I'm beginning to suspect we've met. You don't remember. I've forgotten birthdays, passwords, and once my own apartment number. She giggled. You forgot me too. I'm hoping that's less embarrassing than it sounds. The nearest guard cautiously stepped forward. Your Highness, no. We must ask you to. No. The engineer must accompany. No. You have not heard the request. I know what it is. Fair enough. The guard retreated. None of them appeared willing to physically separate her from Ethan. The atmosphere shifted again as a massive pair of crystal doors silently opened. Every guard immediately straightened. Every official bowed. Even the hovering drones aligned themselves into perfect geometric formation. Queen Lysera entered without announcing herself. She did not need to. Authority surrounded her as naturally as gravity surrounded planets. Her flowing robes shimmered like woven starlight, while an elegant silver crown rested above long, graceful ears that marked her royal bloodline. Her calm expression revealed little, Yet her luminous violet eyes missed nothing, especially not the strange human holding her daughter. She approached without haste. The princess looked over Ethan's shoulder. "Mother." The queen's gaze softened for the briefest moment. Then it returned to Ethan. "I believe," she said evenly, "an explanation is overdue." Ethan nodded once. "I completely agree." "Excellent. I just don't have one." A few officials coughed to hide unexpected laughter. The queen remained perfectly composed. "My daughter appears convinced that you know one another." "She certainly seems convinced." "And are you?" "I'm convinced she's very enthusiastic." The princess frowned dramatically. "You forgot everything." "I'm getting that impression." She gently took Ethan's hand with both of hers. "You made me a bird." He frowned. "A bird?" "It chirped funny. I'm capable of building something that chirps funny. It had one wing that squeaked." "That also sounds like me." She smiled triumphantly. "I knew it." Ethan searched his memory. Nothing. Not even a fragment. It felt like reaching for a tool that should be in the box, but wasn't. The empty sensation bothered him more than he expected. Queen Lysera noticed the subtle change in his expression. "You truly do not remember." "I wish I did." "You are not pretending?" "If I were pretending, I'd invent a better story than being hugged by royalty in front of half the government." One elderly minister quietly nodded. "He has a point." Another whispered back. "I dislike how reasonable he sounds." The queen slowly knelt before her daughter. "My little star." "Yes? When did you first meet him?" The princess answered without hesitation. "When everything was burning." Silence. Even Ethan felt the temperature in the room change. "What was burning?" the queen asked gently. "The station." Several guards looked toward one another. One historian standing nearby suddenly frowned. "The station," the princess continued. "I was scared." She looked up at Ethan again. "But he wasn't." "I wasn't?" "You kept fixing things." "I do that." "You said broken things aren't scary." Something stirred inside Ethan's mind. Not a memory. More like the distant echo of one. Metal corridors, smoke, a tiny hand, someone crying. Then, nothing. The sensation disappeared before he could grasp it. He rubbed his temple. "That's..." His voice faded. The queen noticed. "So, something remains." "I don't know." "You recognize something." "I recognize that I don't like not remembering." The princess reached into the pocket of her tiny dress. "I kept it." She carefully opened her hand. Resting in her palm was a tiny mechanical bird. Its paint was faded. One delicate wing had clearly been repaired several times. The moment Ethan saw it, his heart skipped. Without thinking, he smiled. "I know why it squeaks." Everyone stared at him. He blinked. "I have absolutely no idea how I know that." The tiny mechanical bird rested in the princess's palm, utterly motionless. Its polished alloy had long since lost its shine. Small scratches covered its body, and one wing had clearly been repaired more than once with careful, almost affectionate precision. Whoever had fixed it each time had refused to replace the damaged part, choosing instead to preserve the original. Ethan stared at it. Without understanding why, he reached forward. "May I?" The little princess nodded immediately. "Of course." She placed it gently into his hands. The instant his fingers touched the little machine, an unfamiliar warmth spread through his palms. Not physical warmth, recognition. His thumbs instinctively found a nearly invisible pressure plate beneath one wing. Click. The bird's crystalline eyes illuminated. Tiny servo motors hummed awake. With an enthusiastic chirp that sounded strangely sarcastic, the little bird fluttered into the air. It circled Ethan twice before landing on his shoulder. The entire hall gasped. Ethan looked just as surprised as everyone else. "Well," The bird chirped again. I assume that's a compliment. It answered with another cheerful squeak. The princess clapped excitedly. You remembered. I definitely did not. You knew where the switch was. I also know coffee is hot. This is different. It is significantly different. One palace engineer stepped closer, unable to hide his curiosity. Your Majesty, the activation mechanism was hidden. I noticed. It has never responded to anyone else. I also noticed that. The engineer looked at Ethan. Did you build this? I'd love to say yes. You aren't sure? I'm becoming increasingly concerned that my own life contains spoilers I haven't read. Several officials quietly laughed. Even one of the guards produced a suspicious cough that sounded remarkably like suppressed amusement. Queen Lysera watched Ethan with careful attention. Not suspicion, observation. People lied with words. Memories lied less often. You activated it instinctively, she said. I wish I could explain how. The bird suddenly hopped onto Ethan's head. The princess burst into laughter. It still likes you. I appreciate its loyalty. The bird pecked lightly at his hair. I withdraw that statement. One guard muttered under his breath. The engineer is being inspected. Another replied, by Royal Bird. I don't believe that's an official rank. It is today. The queen almost smiled. Almost. She extended her hand. The bird. It obediently flew onto her wrist. She examined it closely. Tiny engraved markings covered the inside of one wing. Most had faded beyond recognition. One line, however, remained visible. For L. The queen frowned. My daughter's name begins with L. Lyris. Ethan repeated quietly. The princess nodded happily. You remembered my name. He froze. He hadn't been told. No one had spoken it aloud. Yet somehow it had slipped naturally into conversation. The silence that followed became almost uncomfortable. Ethan rubbed his forehead. This is getting unsettling. You knew it, the queen said softly. I shouldn't have. But you did. He looked at the little princess. I honestly don't know how. She tilted her head. You always made that face. What face? The confused one. I have a confused face? She nodded enthusiastically. When machines exploded. They exploded often? You fixed them. I was apparently very busy. She giggled. And then you made funny jokes. What kind? You said... She frowned, trying to remember. If the explosion is colorful, she pointed upward dramatically. It's probably someone else's fault. Ethan blinked. That sounds exactly like something I'd say. The surrounding engineers exchanged knowing looks. One quietly admitted, I've said that twice this month. The older engineer beside him sighed. And both times it was your fault. The younger one looked offended. Technically. Entirely. Queen Lysera's expression grew thoughtful. She turned toward her chief archivist. Search every classified rescue operation conducted near the outer frontier 12 years ago. The elderly archivist bowed. Those records were sealed. I am aware. They require Imperial authorization. You have it. He hesitated. There may be memory redaction protocols involved. Ethan looked up. Memory... what? The archivist answered carefully. Certain military operations involve cognitive shielding. Cognitive shielding. In extreme situations, memories can be selectively suppressed to protect classified information. Ethan laughed once. You're telling me someone filed paperwork on my brain? The archivist considered it. Essentially. That's the most government thing I've ever heard. Even Queen Lysera allowed herself the smallest smile. Before anyone could continue, the palace lights flickered, just once. Then again, every holographic display froze. Maintenance drones abruptly halted in midair. An alarm chimed softly through the corridor. Ethan instinctively looked toward the ceiling. No. One engineer frowned. What? That wasn't random. A third flicker passed through the palace. This time, Ethan noticed something everyone else had missed. The energy streams beneath the transparent floor had shifted rhythm, like a heartbeat skipping. His expression changed completely. Who performed the last synchronization? The chief engineer answered. 3 weeks ago. Using which resonance frequency? 47.2. Ethan's eyes widened. Please tell me nobody rounded the decimals. The engineer blinked. We rounded them. Ethan closed his eyes. Oh, that's adorable. The engineer looked confused. Adorable? You've accidentally taught the palace's quantum lattice to argue with itself. Silence. The bird on Ethan's shoulder emitted one tiny squeak. It almost sounded like agreement. Then every light inside the grand hall went dark. Darkness lasted only a heartbeat. Then emergency illumination awakened throughout the grand hall, bathing everything in deep crimson light. The transparent floor no longer glowed with calm rivers of energy. Instead, brilliant streams pulsed erratically beneath everyone's feet, racing through the palace like nervous lightning trapped inside crystal veins. Several officials gasped. A junior minister immediately fainted. Nobody seemed particularly surprised. One guard looked down at the unconscious official. He does that. Often. Budget meetings are worse. Ethan had already knelt beside the transparent floor. He wasn't looking at the lights. He was listening. His fingertips rested lightly against the crystal surface, while his eyes remained closed. The palace was humming, not audibly. The vibration traveled through the structure itself, forming patterns that only an experienced engineer would recognize. 3 oscillations, he murmured. The chief palace engineer leaned closer. You can hear that? I can feel it. You shouldn't be able to. I've disappointed experts before. Another pulse traveled beneath the floor. Ethan frowned. It isn't failing. Several engineers stared. It isn't. No. He stood. It's trying to compensate. For what? I don't know yet. A maintenance drone suddenly crashed into Ethan's shoulder. It spun twice before regaining balance. Apologies, it announced. My navigation temporarily believed the ceiling was below me. I've had mornings like that. Recommendation acknowledged. The drone floated away as if nothing unusual had happened. Queen Lysera watched Ethan carefully. You understand this system. I understand machines. This lattice predates our empire. Machines don't care who built them. The chief engineer activated a holographic model of the palace. Thousands of glowing conduits spread through the projection like the nervous system of an enormous living creature. Red warning symbols appeared one after another. Power fluctuations increasing. Containment stable. Gravity harmonics drifting. Spatial anchor. He stopped reading. Why is that blinking? Ethan looked up immediately. Spatial anchor? Yes. How many? 36. How many are blinking? The engineer counted. All of them. Ethan inhaled slowly. Well, nobody liked that tone. One guard asked cautiously, Is well good? It depends. On what? Whether you enjoy existing in one dimension. Silence. The guard looked at another guard. I preferred paperwork. So did I. Ethan stepped toward the central console. Who has authorization? Queen Lysera placed her hand on the control surface. I do. The crystalline interface awakened instantly. Ancient alien symbols floated through the air. Most of the engineers manipulated them with elegant gestures. Ethan simply stared. I can't read any of this. The chief engineer looked surprised. You repaired frontier technology. I repair machines. This language disappeared centuries ago. Then we're both equally confused. Princess Lyris tugged gently on Ethan's sleeve. You always guessed. I did. You said machines leave clues. He looked down at her. That also sounds like me. She smiled proudly. You never listened to manuals. Several engineers looked horrified. Ethan raised one finger. In my defense, he paused. Actually, no, they're right. The Queen almost laughed again. Almost. Ethan examined the symbols more carefully. He ignored the language entirely. Instead, he studied their arrangement, patterns, repeating intervals, symmetry. His eyes slowly widened. Wait, the chief engineer frowned. What? This isn't writing. It certainly is. No, Ethan pointed at several symbols. They're circuit diagrams. The room fell silent. They used language as engineering. He moved his finger through the floating projections. These symbols aren't instructions. What are they? They're the machine. Confused expressions spread across the engineers. Ethan smiled despite the growing crisis. Oh, whoever built this. He laughed softly. You magnificent lunatics. The chief engineer blinked. You admire them. They encoded maintenance architecture inside their alphabet. That's impossible. It's brilliant. Princess Lyris looked proudly at her mother. I told you he likes fixing things. Ethan rapidly manipulated the holograms, not because he understood the language, because he understood engineers. They grouped cooling systems together. They hid power rooting inside grammar. They even labeled emergency bypasses as punctuation. The elderly archivist whispered, I've studied this language for 40 years. Ethan nodded sympathetically. You've been reading the instruction manual upside down. The old scholar stared blankly into space. I need to rethink my career. Nearby, the tiny mechanical bird landed atop the holographic projection. It pecked one glowing symbol. Immediately, a hidden section of the interface unfolded. Everyone froze. Ethan slowly looked at the bird. Did you just solve the problem? The bird chirped proudly. I've officially been replaced by poultry. It's not poultry, Princess Lyris corrected. It's a bird. An excellent point. The newly revealed display showed something no one expected. A recording, not recent, very old. Static rippled across the projection before an unfamiliar alien appeared. She possessed the same graceful long ears as the royal family, but wore armor unlike anything displayed in modern museums. Behind her burned stars. Not metaphorically. Entire suns were collapsing. She looked directly toward the recording device. If this message has activated... Her voice echoed through the hall. Then the Guardian has finally returned. Every eye turned toward Ethan. He immediately lifted both hands. I'd like to officially state... He swallowed. I have absolutely no idea what she means. The ancient woman's image flickered as waves of interference rippled through the projection. Fragments of light drifted away from her armor like glowing dust, yet her eyes remained fixed on everyone standing in the grand hall. The Guardian, she repeated, will remember only fragments. That was the price. Ethan slowly lowered his hands. I object to mysterious people talking about me. No one answered. The recording continued. We could not allow the archive to fall into the hands of the devourers. Therefore, his memories were divided and sealed beneath quantum cognitive locks. The chief archivist inhaled sharply. So the memory redaction reports were real. The Queen looked toward him. You doubted them? I believed they were exaggerated. They were. He blinked. Until now. The ancient woman's voice echoed again. If the child survived, Princess Lyris instinctively stepped closer to Ethan. Then he kept his promise. The recording dissolved into static before vanishing completely. Silence settled over the chamber. Ethan rubbed his temples. So, he looked around. Apparently past me was much busier than present me. One of the palace engineers nodded sympathetically. I've forgotten lunch before. I feel like we're discussing slightly different scales. Princess Lyris tugged gently on his sleeve. You carried me. I did? You said I wasn't heavy. You were 7. I still liked hearing it. Ethan smiled faintly. That sounds more believable than everything else today. The palace lights flickered once more. This time they did not recover immediately. The holographic palace map began shifting on its own. Corridors rotated. Energy conduits redrew themselves. Entire sections of the palace seemed to move despite the building remaining perfectly still. The chief engineer paled. The lattice is reconfiguring. Can it do that? Ethan asked. It has never done that. Wonderful. He sighed. I keep discovering sentences nobody wants to hear. One maintenance drone flew into the room upside down. I have become inverted. We noticed. My navigation insists that left is philosophical. Ethan stared at it. I don't even know how to answer that. The drone beeped happily. Response unnecessary. It floated away, still upside down. Several guards watched it disappear. One quietly whispered, I think the drones are getting weirder. Another replied, I think we're getting used to it. Queen Lysera approached the floating palace projection. Explain. Ethan studied the shifting pathways. The lattice isn't malfunctioning. You've said that before. I was right. Then why is the palace rearranging itself? He zoomed in on the energy network. Because it thinks someone important has returned. The Queen's expression remained unreadable. You. I sincerely hope not. Princess Lyris looked puzzled. But the recording said Guardian. It did. And everyone keeps looking at you. I've noticed. She smiled. I like it. I was afraid you'd say that. One of the senior scientists cleared his throat. The lattice appears to be searching. For what? We don't know. Ethan leaned closer to the projection. No. His eyes narrowed. It isn't searching. It isn't? It's opening. A chill spread through the room. The holographic image zoomed beneath the palace automatically. Layer after layer of forgotten construction appeared beneath the visible foundations. Ancient chambers, massive circular vaults, countless sealed corridors untouched for centuries. The archivist whispered, Those levels don't exist. Ethan looked at him. They clearly do. They aren't on any blueprint. He pointed at the hologram. They're literally waving at us. One young officer scratched his helmet. I've guarded this palace for 12 years. Another nodded. I've apparently been guarding half a palace. The mechanical bird suddenly left Ethan's shoulder. It flew directly toward the holographic map before stopping above one hidden chamber. Its tiny wings glowed softly. Then it chirped exactly 3 times. The chamber illuminated. Every other hidden room faded away. Only one remained. At its center appeared a single line of ancient symbols. The chief archivist translated slowly. For the one who remembers. Return alone. Princess Lyris frowned immediately. No. Everyone looked at her. She crossed her arms. He's not going alone. The Queen crouched beside her daughter. My little star. No. It may be dangerous. Exactly. Queen Lysera blinked. That is not usually considered a persuasive argument. Princess Lyris looked at Ethan. He gets lost. Ethan couldn't argue. That has happened. If he goes alone, he'll probably fix something that wasn't broken. Several engineers coughed into their sleeves. The chief engineer quietly admitted, I've done that. So have I, another confessed. Ethan sighed. I feel strangely judged by my own profession. The Queen rose gracefully. The chamber will remain sealed until we understand what awaits below. Almost as if the palace disagreed, a deep vibration rolled through the floor. Not violent, intentional. Ancient mechanisms awakened somewhere beneath their feet. Stone that had not moved in centuries began sliding against crystal. Low echoes spread through the palace like the breathing of some enormous sleeping machine. The hidden chamber on the holographic map began flashing. Once, twice, 3 times. Then the transparent floor beneath Ethan's boots lit up. A narrow circle of pale blue light formed around him alone. The palace AI spoke calmly. Identity partially confirmed. Everyone froze. Guardian recognition, 38%. Ethan slowly looked upward. Can we agree that 38% isn't very convincing? The AI answered immediately. Correction accepted. A brief pause followed, beginning secondary verification. The pale blue circle surrounding Ethan brightened until delicate strands of light rose around him like transparent vines. They did not restrain him. Instead, they drifted slowly through the air, scanning every movement, every heartbeat, every subtle fluctuation in his nervous system. The palace AI spoke again. Secondary verification initiated. Estimated duration. It paused. Uncertain. Ethan sighed. I appreciate the confidence. The AI answered immediately. Confidence level, 42%. Somehow that's worse. Several officials quietly chuckled. Princess Lyris remained inside the glowing circle despite 3 guards politely asking her to step back. No. Your Highness, no. The scan may affect you. It likes me. The AI interrupted. Statement confirmed. Every head turned toward the ceiling. The captain of the guard slowly looked upward. It has opinions now. One engineer whispered, I preferred yesterday. Another nodded. I miss boring. Thin beams of light gently swept across Ethan. Tiny holographic symbols appeared around him before dissolving one after another. The chief archivist watched in fascination. It isn't examining his body. What is it examining? Queen Lysera asked. His memories. Ethan frowned. I'd rather it didn't. Preference acknowledged. The AI paused. Preference denied. Princess Lyris giggled. It told you no. I noticed. I've never seen anyone argue with a building. I'm beginning to lose. A sudden pulse passed through Ethan's mind. Not painful, familiar. For the briefest instant. Smoke. A damaged corridor. Emergency lights. Someone small hiding beneath twisted metal. A frightened voice. Please don't leave. His own voice answered calmly. I have to fix the door first. Then everything vanished again. Ethan staggered 1 step. Queen Lysera moved instinctively. Engineer. I'm all right. You remembered something. Not enough. He closed his eyes. I can almost reach it. The mechanical bird flew into the circle. Instead of triggering another alarm, the palace AI calmly announced, Companion device recognized. Companion? Ethan looked at the tiny machine. I built you for more than entertainment, didn't I? The bird chirped once. It landed on his wrist before extending one tiny crystalline wing toward the center of the circle. The blue light immediately shifted from pale sapphire to brilliant gold. Every engineer in the room stared. The chief engineer whispered, That's impossible. Ethan was growing tired of hearing that sentence. Could everyone please stop saying impossible? The engineer answered honestly. I'm trying. The floor trembled. Not violently, purposefully. A circular platform slowly rose from beneath the transparent crystal. Upon it rested a single object, a metallic bracelet unlike any technology Ethan had ever seen. Its surface flowed like liquid silver despite remaining perfectly solid. Ancient symbols moved beneath the metal as though swimming through water. The AI announced, Guardian interface located. No one moved. Queen Lysera looked toward Ethan. It appears to be waiting. I noticed. For you. I also noticed that. Princess Lyris smiled brightly. Go on. What if it explodes? She thought for a moment. Stand far away? I appreciate your safety planning. I learned from you. I apparently had questionable teaching methods. He slowly approached the platform. The bracelet reacted before he touched it. It unfolded by itself, Tiny rings separated and rotated weightlessly around an invisible center. The surrounding air shimmered. Stars. Real stars. Miniature holographic constellations expanded across the chamber. Not projections. Accurate astronomical maps. The archivist gasped. Those systems... The chief scientist stepped closer. Some of those stars no longer exist. The map was ancient, older than the Empire itself. Ethan extended one hesitant hand. The bracelet floated gently onto his wrist. It tightened comfortably. No pain, no force, simply recognition. The ancient symbols immediately transformed into readable language. Ethan blinked. I can understand it. Queen Lysera looked surprised. What does it say? He read slowly. If you are reading this. He swallowed. Welcome back. Silence settled across the hall. Then another sentence appeared. Memory restoration unavailable. Ethan laughed once. Well, that's disappointing. New words replaced the first. Cognitive partitions remain locked until archive security is restored. The chief archivist frowned. So your memories were intentionally divided. Ethan nodded slowly. Looks that way. Princess Lyris gently held his free hand. You'll remember later. I hope so. You promised. He smiled at her. I seem to make a lot of promises. And you keep them. Before Ethan could answer, the bracelet suddenly projected another image into the air. Not a recording, a live schematic, far beneath the palace, deep below the hidden chamber. There was something enormous, a perfectly spherical structure almost the size of a city. Countless energy conduits connected the palace above to the object below. The chief engineer's face turned pale. That powers the entire capital. Ethan shook his head. No. What? It powers much more than that. The bracelet highlighted thousands of glowing lines extending outward from the planet, across nearby systems, across sectors, across the Empire itself. Queen Lysera stared silently. Our entire civilization is connected to it, Ethan finished. A warning suddenly flashed across the projection. Archive core destabilization, 8%. Estimated time until autonomous awakening, 004712. The AI spoke with perfect calm. Recommendation. Everyone waited. Please hurry. Even Ethan couldn't help smiling. I think... He looked toward the Queen. The palace just learned sarcasm. No one wasted another second. The hidden elevator beneath the grand hall descended through layer after forgotten layer of the Imperial palace. Crystal walls gave way to ancient alloy untouched by time. The architecture became older, simpler, yet somehow more advanced. Every corridor seemed designed by engineers who expected civilizations to rise and fall while their machines patiently continued working. Princess Lyris refused to remain behind. Queen Lysera had argued for exactly 14 seconds. Then she sighed. I surrender. Lyris smiled victoriously. I inherited that from you. I know. Ethan quietly whispered to one of the guards. Does she always win? The captain answered without hesitation. Eventually. I admire the honesty. I've learned resistance is expensive. The enormous spherical chamber finally opened before them. It stretched beyond sight. At its center floated the archive core, a silver sphere suspended inside rings of rotating light. Billions of tiny symbols flowed across its surface like galaxies made of language. The bracelet around Ethan's wrist glowed. The mechanical bird flew ahead, circling the sphere before landing on a small crystalline pedestal. The AI spoke once more. Final verification. Ethan looked upward. Let me guess. No answer. He sighed. I miss when machines ignored me. The sphere awakened. A gentle female voice echoed through the chamber. Guardian Ethan Carter. He froze. You know my full name. It was never forgotten. I wish I could say the same. The voice softened. You chose to forget. Queen Lysera looked at him. You volunteered. The sphere answered for him. 12 years earlier, hostile forces attempted to seize the archive, a repository preserving the scientific heritage of thousands of extinct civilizations. Complete access required a living guardian. Images filled the chamber. The burning research station, explosions, scientists evacuating, a frightened little princess hidden beneath collapsed machinery, a younger Ethan repairing a damaged escape capsule with shaking hands while enemy drones searched nearby. I remember. His voice became almost a whisper. The memories returned, not all at once, but like sunrise replacing darkness. He remembered lifting little Lyris into his arms. He remembered building the tiny mechanical bird from spare components because she refused to stop crying. He remembered promising her, good engineers always finish the repair. He remembered the decision. To protect the archive, he had willingly divided his own memories, ensuring no one could force its location from his mind. The process had erased almost everything connected to that day. The Queen watched the memories unfold. So you saved her? Ethan nodded slowly. I didn't know she was a princess. You never asked. I was a little busy. One recording showed younger Ethan throwing a broken maintenance drone toward pursuing assassins. The drone loudly announced, "Congratulations, you are now experiencing catastrophic failure." The explosion that followed disabled every enemy machine in the corridor. Present-day Ethan laughed. I forgot about that. Princess Lyris laughed harder. You laughed then too. The archive spoke again. Mission fulfilled. The glowing symbols surrounding the sphere gradually slowed. Guardian authorization no longer required. The bracelet unlocked itself. Instead of falling away, it transformed into hundreds of tiny lights before dissolving into the archive. Every warning vanished. The unstable energy streams throughout the palace returned to perfect harmony. Far above, the crystal city shimmered brighter than ever before. The palace AI calmly announced, "Emergency concluded." A short pause followed. I recommend lunch. Even Queen Lysera laughed. I agree. The AI answered, recommendation accepted. As they returned to the grand hall, the atmosphere had completely changed. The guards who had nearly arrested Ethan now stood proudly at attention. One captain saluted. Engineer Carter. Ethan returned an awkward salute. I've never actually learned the proper way. Neither have we. Comforting. The captain smiled. We improvised. Several palace engineers surrounded Ethan almost immediately. How did you recognize the ancient circuitry? You decoded an extinct language in minutes. Can you teach us? Ethan grinned. Certainly. They eagerly leaned closer. First lesson. Yes? Never trust documentation written by engineers. The room erupted with laughter. Even the chief engineer couldn't argue. That's painfully accurate. Queen Lysera approached after the crowd dispersed. The Empire owes you more than it can repay. I only repaired something that was broken. You restored far more than machinery. She extended a beautifully crafted insignia bearing the Imperial crest intertwined with a tiny silver gear. I would like to appoint you Imperial Scientific Advisor. Ethan stared. I came here for 3 days. I am aware. I have plants at home. We can transport them. I don't actually own plants. We can provide those as well. He laughed. You're very difficult to negotiate with. I've had excellent teachers. She glanced toward Lyris. The little princess had already taken Ethan's toolbox and was dragging it across the polished floor. You promised, she reminded him. I remember. You said you'd come back. I did. So now you live here. That's not exactly how promises work. It is now. One nearby guard quietly whispered, She's already decided. Another nodded. He doesn't stand a chance. Ethan looked around the magnificent palace, at the engineers arguing excitedly over impossible technology, at the queen whose suspicion had become trust. and finally at the little girl with long ears who had recognized him long before he recognized himself. He smiled. Perhaps the assignment had never been routine. Perhaps some repairs simply took 12 years to finish. He picked up his toolbox, took Lyris's waiting hand, and together they walked deeper into the palace, not toward an ending, but toward a future where forgotten promises had been honored, old wounds had finally healed, and one ordinary human engineer had become part of the story of an empire that would never again mistake kindness for insignificance.